and let us all do we can to build a better future.
They knew a year and a half. More than that, they knew a year ago. What am I talking about? Well, the New York Times has reported that Israel knew about Hamas's attack more than a year ago. Now, I found this story to be very enlightening because I think a lot of us found it suspicious that, this massive attack took place October 7th, which then led to absolute madness and destruction, ongoing war, the bombing of Gaza. But the thing is, what's interesting is that this all could have been stopped, and a choice was made. A choice was made, and the consequences turned out to be very devastating. I want to give a huge shout out to Case Study QB, who managed to post this video up. And I think it's only fair that we play it. Yes, it's being aired on MSNBC, but this was from an article from the New York Times. They knew a year ago. They could have stopped it. But let's hear how corporate media spins it.
Thanks to you at home for joining me this hour. We begin tonight with some breaking news. The New York Times has just published a major new report about Israeli intelligence failures in the lead up to Hamas's October 7th attack. According to this new reporting, not yet verified by NBC News, Israeli intelligence officials obtained Hamas's detailed battle plan for the October 7th attack more than a year before the attack took place. Quoting from the New York Times, Israeli officials obtained Hamas's battle plan for the October 7th terrorist attack more than a year before it happened, documents, emails, and interviews show. But Israeli military and intelligence officials dismissed the plan as aspirational, considering it too difficult for Hamas to carry out. The approximately 40-page document, which the Israeli authorities codenamed Jericho Wall, outlined point by point exactly the kind of devastating invasion that led to the deaths of about 1,200 people. Hamas followed the blueprint with shocking precision. The document called for a barrage of rockets at the outside of the attack. It called for drones to knock out the security cameras and automated machine guns along the border. And it called for gunmen to pour into Israel en masse in paragliders, on motorcycles, and on foot, all of which happened on October 7th. Officials privately concede that had the military taken these warnings seriously, Israel could have blunted the attacks or possibly even prevented them. What could have been an intelligence coup turned into one of the worst miscalculations in Israel's 75-year history. Joining us now is former CIA director under President Obama, John Brennan. He is now an MSNBC senior national security and intelligence analyst. Director Brennan, thank you for being here.
So I want to pause here for a second. Folks, I think it's important for us to remember, look, Gaza, it's surrounded. Concrete walls, watchtowers, security cameras, everything. How is it that you don't see this haymaker coming? I mean, they have the intel service there. And not to mention, we already know the evidence is out there before us in regards towards what can come into Gaza, what can come out of Gaza. And most notably, Israel controls the water, gas, electricity, everything, resources necessary to go in and out of Gaza. How is it that you don't see this thing coming? And if you truly knew about it a year in advance, because remember, folks, remember, a little bit different subject altogether, but questions were being asked about, that's right, the Nord Stream pipeline, the pipeline that blew up, that apparently Russia did, even though it was gas from Russia going into Germany, so Russia was making money off of it, so it was their big brain tactic to get rid of it because it was making them money. I've never heard of that before. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, ever in the history of everything. And then it came to the point to where so many people were starting to question, well, how did it get destroyed? And never forget, it was the New York Times that also did an article. Maybe it's a good thing we don't know what happened to the Nord Stream pipeline. Oh, wait, we have to know what happened because it's completely suspicious. Just saying it's suspicious now how this whole thing played out too with Israel and Palestine.
Here, and let me just first get your reaction to this bombshell reporting from the New York Times.
Well, Alex, I was utterly shocked when I read through that New York Times report. The fact that the Israelis were able to collect more than a year in advance the actual battle plan that Hamas used, but then failed to be able to realize that this was, in fact, what they were going to do. It shows that they made faulty assumptions. And that's one of the real problems with any type of policy or intelligence failure when you make those assumptions. And here it was underestimating the capabilities of their adversary. And that usually happens when they're looking at sort of a paramilitary adversary. It's sort of unconventional, irregular forces. But this document, this Jericho Wall document that they got, it should have been the prism through which they looked at every Hamas action over the past year to see whether or not the Hamas fighters were actually working on it and making progress against it. They deemed that it was too aspirational for Hamas to carry out. But they had more than a year to be able to judge and evaluate whether or not Hamas was moving down that progression. And obviously, this is something that is going to require very extensive review in terms of what the failure was. But it also raises serious questions about how intelligence might be not used appropriately, or is not the system is not working the way it should.
Now, I know all of you are probably half asleep listening to corporate media drone on, and I do apologize in advance for having you all be subjected to corporate media. But I want to play a video from a different perspective. Yes, from the right. But I think it's important because I did play a video clip a few weeks ago, I think sometime in early October, maybe mid-October. Charlie Kirk was on the PBD podcast, and he said, was a stand-down order given? Something doesn't add up. And so I want to play this video where he responds, because on October 7th, 6 days after October 7th, when he went on the PDD podcast, he was asked a series of questions about the Israel intelligence failures that happened that allowed Hamas to launch this attack. And the clip went viral, and he was attacked as being called an anti-Semite. Now, let's play this video here for all of you to see, because it's important to see both sides of the spectrum.
About 6 days after the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, I went on the great Patrick Bet-David's podcast. I encourage you to check him out at amfest.com. Patrick Bet-David is one of my favorite people in the country. He's an amazing member of the media and really smart. Patrick Bet-David runs Valuetainment. So we had this conversation, and I asked a series of questions. And on my birthday, and it so happens to be the first game of Oregon v. Washington, I had this all planned. And Andrew is a big Washington fan. We'll see who ends up winning tonight. It's this whole thing. The whole week is centered around it. It's really high stakes. And so I had, I was like, okay, it's my birthday. I've been traveling like crazy. I wanted to watch the Ducks v. Huskies, the whole thing. And next thing you know, Andrew's calling me on Shabbat. I said, what on earth is going on? I thought he was calling to wish me a happy birthday. And he says, Charlie, you're going viral. Everyone says you're a Holocaust denier and all this. It's terrible. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm the most pro-Israel guy out there. And they said, well, no, you're not allowed to even, again, let me reemphasize, calling me on Shabbat, okay? You're not allowed to, apparently, with the new rules of this sick world we live in, you're not allowed to even ask, was there an intel failure leading into the October 7th massacre? Not allowed to do that. So what are the cut? What's the cut again here? Oh, yeah, on PBD. So this is what I said. Let's play cut 131. And the world lost its mind. I was attacked from every direction, like you could imagine. Institutional, there was a series of op-eds, articles, all trying to cancel me. They failed. And again, calling me an anti-Semite, all this sort of stuff. Again, it really bothered me. And it turns out what I was saying was, because I double and triple down, and people said, don't do it, it's too controversial. I said, no. My gut tells me that the Israeli intelligence likely knew about this attack plan ahead of time. They said, Charlie, how dare you say that? That's anti-Semitic. New York Times. Israel knew Hamas's plan more than a year ago.
Now, you don't have to agree with Charlie Kirk. You don't have to like his perspectives or points of view. However, even I was starting to question, and so was many other people in independent media, how can this happen? How do you not see this haymaker coming? I mean, in the world's most one-sided fistfight, in the most controlled environment ever, Israel has all the cards in its favor. This is truth. Israel has all the cards in its favor. They control what goes in and out. The intel services there should be on point. but something went wrong. Now, before October 7th, what people don't talk about is all the internal political problems, domestic issues that Netanyahu's government was having. And what's the best distraction ever? Well, why not dust the old playbook of wag the dog and have madness and insanity run amok? It's not the first time a government did something to distract the people from internal issues. Maybe get people more concerned or riled up for some conflict overseas. It's always a great distraction. A great distraction. And it worked perfectly. And the cost and the consequence is we are now setting ourselves up for the next war, 10, 12 years down the road, 20,000 plus people dead from unending bombings, our politicians not doing a damn thing, and of course, hey, speech being restricted. Brilliant. Brilliant across the board.
Play cut 131.
How did these guys not know this was taking place?
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that's an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it.
Something happened. Something happened. Now, we could speculate and say, well, how nefarious it would be for a government to have its own citizens killed. I mean, no government would ever do that in the history of mankind ever to cause a great distraction or something of that nature. No, that would never happen in human history. There's no example. Oh, wait, there are. There's always an example. Never underestimate man's inhumanity to man or what people in power will do to stay in power. And when this video clip came out, I agreed with Charlie Kirk, what he said. That's interesting. I didn't see that perspective. When he said that statement, I began thinking more and more about it. Hey, Israel is a fortress. How did you not see this punch happen? It's like at the bar. You're at the bar, you're drinking, you're having a good time, and then some jagoff comes up to you. You stand up to him, he stands up to you, and he says, I'm going to punch you in the face. And he's signaling it, and you're not moving. You know how to duck, dodge, and dip and dodge. You know how to block, but you let him punch you in the face. Why? You know, if you see a fist coming at you, you're going to dodge and block it and punch right back. So it's only fair to have some people raise an eyebrow or two and say, wait a minute, something doesn't add up. We have questions. More for this.
No, that's a small, and I'm not even getting into the stand down order thing, okay? There's no insinuation in this article that says that, so I'm going to put that aside. Morning Joe actually goes there, interestingly enough. But I double and triple down. I said, I find it very hard to believe that the Israeli government didn't know this was going to happen. This is bombshell stuff, everybody. And it's very personal for me because I had Jewish friends that I had known for 10 years call me a Holocaust denier. I have the text messages right here. Charlie, you are no better than a Holocaust denier for saying this.
It sucks. I know firsthand what it's like when friends gut check you. It sucks, Charlie. We've all been there, buddy. Don't worry. You just got to keep your head on a swivel and drink water. It sucks. That's all I could say. It sucks. It sucks.
Israeli officials obtained Hamas's battle plan more than a year before it happened. Documents, emails, interviews show. But Israeli military and intelligence officials dismissed the plan as aspirational, considering it too difficult for Hamas to carry out. The approximately 40-page document, which the Israeli authorities codenamed Jericho Wall, outlined point by point exactly the kind of devastating invasion that led to the deaths of about 1,200 people. The translated document, which was reviewed by the New York Times, did not set a date, but it described the methodical assault to overwhelm fortifications. Listen to this quote from the New York Times. Hamas followed the blueprint with shocking precision. The Israeli government knew. They had the whole battle plan. Details? This is the New York Times. Hamas followed the blueprint with shocking precision. They knew points of entry, the methodology. They knew it all.
So my question is, they could have scouts and probably people looking in, or my other question that I would have to ask, and I will be bold to ask this, is who told them where the front door was at? Who told them where the side entrance was at? Who told them where the back door was at? It's almost like it was guided. It was perfect, right? Really? I mean, how do you not see this perfect plan coming? How do you not see this punch happening unless, I don't know, controversial statement, you let them and you showed them how to do it? What? What? People died for no reason? It could have been stopped a year ago? 20,000 deaths could have been avoided? What? What? I know, folks. How evil would it be? Could have been stopped. A choice was made, but he didn't follow through to stop it.
The Israeli government had the whole ball game ahead of them. The document was circulated widely among Israeli military and intel leaders, but experts determined that an attack of that scale and ambition was beyond Hamas's capabilities. Before America sends another dime to Israel, there better be mass resignations, firings, terminations, and answers.
He's not wrong. But I'm starting to wonder what else will eventually surface. You see, folks, I said this on the show, and I know sometimes they get repetitive. I apologize, but you could tell a very good lie, and a lie could be built strong. But see, all lies are the same. They're weak. Their foundation will collapse. The basement will leak. The attic roof will collapse. Everything's going to fall apart because a lie always falls apart. That is the truth. It's undeniable. Let's continue on with the rest of this video from Case Study QB. Just a little bit longer. I apologize. It's MSNBC, but I wanted to play Charlie Kirk's perspective so that we could hear his point of view too. So let's return back to our corporate overlords.
If this document didn't make it through to be actually an opportunity for Israel to stop and prevent those horrific attacks.
Yeah, when you say this document should have been the prism through which all Hamas exercises, for example, were seen, there's a detail in the piece that says in July, just 3 months before the attacks, a veteran analyst with Unit 8200, which is Israel's signals intelligence agency, warned that Hamas had conducted an intense day-long training exercise that appeared similar to what was outlined in the blueprint. And the same analyst goes on to say, it is a plan designed to start a war, she added. It's not just a raid on a village. First of all, the idea that they effectively saw a dry run for this, how unusual is that? And in terms of an analyst ringing an alarm bell so clearly, is that unusual?
Well, that analyst did exactly what she was supposed to do, which was to look at what Hamas was doing and to see whether or not there's any correlation with previous intelligence that the Israelis collected. And she seemed to be pushing it, but somebody up the chain of command, or somebody's up the chain of command, still determined that Hamas would be unable to carry out such a broad, extensive plan. But this is where you really need to have those analysts continue to push it up the chain of command. And this is what they're going to have to look at in any type of commission review. How did the system break down so profoundly that they weren't able to exploit the opportunity that was given to them by actually collecting this document more than a year ago?
Because, my friends, they were given orders to stand down. Let it happen. It'll be a perfect distraction. We got some domestic issues. Oh, there's some instability in the government. Oh, why not? Let's use the old wag the dog tactic and have a good old war to distract everyone. I know Zelensky's a little upset because now, hey, no one's paying attention to what's happening between Russia and Ukraine now.
To that end, it sounds like there was one colonel in charge of the Gaza unit in particular who sort of stood in the way of her warnings potentially ascending up the food chain, if you will. A colonel in the Gaza division brushed off the analyst's concerns, according to encrypted emails that were viewed by the Times. I utterly refute that this scenario is imaginary, the analyst wrote in email exchanges. The colonel in the Gaza division applauded the analysis, but said the exercise was part of a totally imaginative scenario, not an indication of Hamas's ability to pull it off. In short, let's wait patiently.
Sort of all too familiar when those intel people told good old George Bush Jr. about what's going to happen on a certain day called 9/11. And, he told them, hey, you covered your ass. You covered your ass. That's what he told them. They covered themselves, right? Say it with me, folks. What could possibly go wrong? All this could have been avoided. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that depressing? This all could have been avoided. Needless deaths on both sides. And a destructive conflict. So many homes and residents and refugee centers and hospitals were destroyed since October 7th took place. Is Charlie Kirk wrong in his analysis? No. He's not a denier. He just raised an important question. I think all of us across the political spectrum here in the United States should be asking that question, turning around and say, hey, things aren't adding up. And I'm surprised this actually got written in the New York Times, that it was allowed to be printed in the New York Times. I wonder if there will be follow through by the New York Times or anyone else in the media. Probably not. Probably not. Only a handful, brave few, will keep on talking about this story. But if they knew, and it could have been avoided, what kind of different world would we be in right now? What kind of scenario would we be living in right now if this wasn't allowed to happen? Madness.
The colonel wrote. Director Brennan, in short, let's wait patiently. That is the stuff that lives on in infamy after October 7th. I know we're talking about a different intelligence service over here in Israel, but as far as that chain of command, as far as the ways an analyst would have around a colonel like this who seems dead set on not taking this anywhere, I mean, does that opportunity exist? How many people do you imagine saw this report?
There should have been a lot, and there should be no single point of failure. No single person should be able to stop something like this from being further reviewed and looked at. If this document, seems to be no question, according to the reporting, that this was a legitimate Hamas document in the eyes of Israeli intelligence. They just didn't believe they were able to carry this out. But something like this should have been shared broadly. I wonder, something like this should have been shared broadly across Israeli defense intelligence, Shin Bet, even Mossad, and others. And even to the extent that, the United States has such a close intelligence relationship with the Israelis, this is something that I think they really would want to have fresh eyes look at, and to also see whether or not U.S. intelligence or other intelligence might have picked up some indications that, in fact, Hamas was able to start to operationalize this plan. But if it was kept within a small group of people, or if one individual was able to stop this from actually being reviewed and considered to be a real legitimate plan that Hamas would be able to carry out, there is a strong need for there to be an immediate review of what's going on inside of Israeli intelligence and how this information gets the policymakers to make sure that it can be acted upon, operationalized, and to mitigate any potential future threats.
Former CIA Director John Brennan, thank you so much for.
I'll tell you what they did. If there was any kind of crossover of intelligence or people, maybe also getting the same awareness too. What they did, they looked at the paper, they balled it up, and they threw it in the trash bin. Let's sit on it. Let's wait on it. Don't focus about it. Don't look too deep into it. Why not? I mean, there's a plan of an attack. That colonel, whoever that colonel is, should be held accountable. Was that colonel following orders? Who else was involved in knowing of this information? A year ago, it could have been stopped. I keep saying it, but it's important to remind all of you. And no, it's not being mean or insensitive, because lives were lost. That means lives were sacrificed because either one, God forbid, people were lazy and didn't know how to do their job, or two, which is worse, They allowed it to happen. It was like, okay, we're making a calculated risk here for more political control, and we're going to sacrifice some lives. I don't care how many people are dead, but it's all about power and maintenance. It's all about power and control, power and persuasion. I would be surprised now that if that wasn't the case and it just turned out people were just being lazy. But my gut is telling me that they knew and it was allowed to happen. Because how could something so crazy be coordinated so perfectly was also not a little bit of help along the side? It just doesn't add up.
For your time and your perspective on all this, we really appreciate it. I want to bring into the conversation Ben Rhodes, who served as Deputy National Security Advisor in the Obama administration. Ben, thanks for joining me tonight. I am shocked by the reporting. I also am shocked given the public statements we've gotten from the Israeli government thus far. The Times of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, I believe this is October 28th, there is a tweet that is subsequently pulled down, but that he tweets saying, contrary to the false claims, under no circumstances and at no stage was Prime Minister Netanyahu warned of Hamas's war intentions. Perhaps this never made it to his desk, but
or is it that he knew of it and never got to his desk because he didn't want to come to his desk? Because now here comes the quick defense, like, oh no, wait a minute. This never got to his attention. See, this is how the media works. Like, well, okay, this story happened, but okay, time to put up the shield wall because we can't have people think for themselves. We can't have people question anything. We can't have people ask, well, wait a minute, things aren't adding up. I think we're all a little bit concerned here, but oh, no. Corporate media is quick to regulate your thoughts and telling you what you are allowed to see, what you're allowed to talk about. Because let's face it, in this day and age of media censorship, the jackboot is coming down on all of us unless we move out of the way.
That in and of itself, if you listen to Director Brennan, seems to be like a massive security failure.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, first of all, he's the responsible official. He's the prime minister of the country. And his whole political identity has been tied to the fact that he was the person that assured Israel's security. So either you had a situation in which there were warnings that were ignored that may have reached him or people in his cabinet, or this system was so dysfunctional that information wasn't being shared and that the focus from, because the other issue here, Alex, is sometimes there's a demand from policymakers, what do we have in terms of Hamas's intentions? What we saw in the run-up to October 7th is a number of things. Number one, we saw mass political dysfunction in Israel. As Prime Minister Netanyahu was trying to ram through these judicial changes, you had mass protests in the streets, and you had public warnings from some of his security officials that dysfunction was putting Israel in danger. Then you had the IDF units that guarded that border up in the West Bank, in part because they were protecting Israeli settlers who were in clashes with Palestinians. So you had a lot of dysfunction. And what we learned in this really astonishing reporting is that at a minimum, that dysfunction was in the Israeli intelligence community and was preventing what was a document that was...
Or it's designed that way in order to cover up a crime. Look, I think we sat through this enough. What is the final conclusion, the real analysis that we can get from this? And that is, people are starting to ask more questions. Just like with the war in Ukraine, people are asking questions. Why was this conflict happening? How did this start? What's going on? How come no one saw this happening before October 7th? Oh, this all could have been avoided? Now, I think we've seen so many TV shows and movies showing the intel services as being on point. These super secret agents who are trying to stop a terrorist bombing or some kind of nefarious scheme from being hatched out in order to save the world and stop World War III. Wow. Hollywood knows how to tell a story. The truth is, these intel agencies, they got their own agenda, their own plans. Remember, Chucky Boy Schumer once said live on air during the height of the Trump presidency, you don't want to make enemies of the intel agencies. You don't want to make enemies of these people. So one agent did her job, all right, said, hey, there's something happening, and everybody else did nothing. Now, only one colonel was supposed to be that person that stopped it, but I'm willing to bet that there were other people saying, okay, make sure nothing else comes from this. Let's bury it. Let's sit on it and wait. And by doing so, another war is going to happen. Yes, we're still with this conflict right now, but 10 years down the road, we'll see another one and another one after that. 20,000 lives gone. If we want a better future, people need to start asking questions. Now, I don't care where you stand politically, but something isn't right. And we need to call out the lie and start speaking truth to power. Or else, by a choice of our own actions, by not doing anything, the consequence will be a click, copy, paste version of what we're living through right now. We have to be better.